You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission. Welcome to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis. Our guests today, two guests, are Ian Ferguson, back for a second bite at the apple, and Glenn Aldridge, his partner at CoSurge CPAs. Now, to introduce them both individually, Ian has served with a top 200 CPA firm and has managed his own practice in Greenville and provided services for multiple not-for-profit organizations. Recently combining efforts with his friend, Glenn Aldridge, a 35-year veteran in public accounting, audit sense instructor, and managing partner with CoSurge CPAs. They have, you told me this, 23 in their firm and located actually all around. It's 100% remote. And so we may get into that a little bit today as well. They have a highly diverse client portfolio and provide audit leadership for other CPA firms throughout the United States, which is kind of an interesting twist where the CPAs of the CPAs. And I don't know where it ends, but they're auditing the auditors. Here at MBU's Leader to Leader conference today, they are speaking in a workshop that will explore strategies for entrepreneurs and not-for-profit leaders to build, and I'm sure sometimes rebuild, an organization that maximizes value for a sale or a leadership transition, to design a highly sellable, deeply meaningful organization that reflects its founders' values, how important that is. Strategies will emphasize the importance of long-term thinking and ethical leadership, things that Maranatha is all about. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's been kind of a long time. I was trying to think the last time we had two guests that weren't married.
We're definitely not married.
Yeah, no, well, partners, but not in that way. And so it's interesting to be able to get your perspectives. Of course, Ian, you were on the podcast when you were up here before to speak in a General Assembly on how to use what would oftentimes be considered secular business in a ministry context. And I appreciate your insights shared with the student body back then. Yeah. And you're based in the Greenville, South Carolina area.
I am.
And you are based in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Right. And so welcome to the winter,
Thank you.
And
yes.
I'm sorry we don't have much snow on the ground. It's been that kind of winter for us too, which no one here is complaining about. But how much snow does it take to shut things down where you guys are?
About 2 inches.
That's all it takes?
Yep. For us.
Or the threat of that.
Even the threat. Cancel the schools. Yeah. Are the kids always looking anxious for a snow day when it's in the forecast?
Well, my kids are homeschooled, so they don't get a snow day just because it snows, but they do enjoy getting out in the snow.
Yeah, but I know how that goes too. You know, it's Friday. It's like, you know what? Let's just not have class today.
It does alter the schedule for the day.
For sure. So tell me family sizes. How are the kids grown since last time?
They have grown since last time. My oldest is 11, got a son who's 11, a daughter who's 7, a daughter who's 5, and a son who's 4.
You were able to rattle those off. Of course, you're a numbers guy.
I am a numbers guy.
I respect that. That was pretty good. And you've got four
daughters, and actually 2 sons and 1 on the way.
Oh, wait, what?
So the sons are sons-in-law, but I refer to them as my sons once they're on board.
And the 2 on the way are?
One on the way is next month. So I got a few weeks away from our 3rd daughter getting married.
Congratulations. That's exciting. And I'm in the same boat, man. Well, I mean, as the father of the potential groom, right? But so that's a much different wedding experience, I'm sure. But my middle son is getting married in May, and we just couldn't be more thrilled about what God's doing for them. But it's a little nerve-wracking because when they're his kids' age, right? You can just pick them up and move them if you need to. Like you have a little more command authority, and then they get into this adult age and they start having their own ideas. What's the deal with that?
Post high school, for my wife and I, we consider that the most disconcerting age of our kids. You no longer control their decisions, and you just kind of sit back and hope that the decisions that they make are in line with where you expect them to be going. And so, in God's will. So we've been very pleased with that.
It's awesome and rewarding when it works out well, but it is very nerve-wracking in the meantime. Yeah. What I never appreciated about my own parents was how my decisions were impacting them emotionally and all of that, because they didn't want to let me in on that or make me feel pressured in doing that. But, man, they're along for the roller coaster ride as well, aren't they? So that's something to remember if you're a young person. Your parents, call your mom. So if anything, we could talk about that. All right. So tell me about this firm. It's kind of been about 1.5 years since you decided to merge. You'd mentioned to me earlier that your firm had done business with their firm and kind of subcontracted to help meet needs and overflow in that. Was it just a logical progression that you joined forces, or how did that come together?
Yeah, so our firm started in 2008. Basically, it was 3 firms coming together, and so my firm started in 2008. And we had grown to the point where we really needed to bring some other people in as business partners. And at that point, Ian had been working with me for 4 years, and another business partner had been working with me for about 5 years. So just thinking it through with each of them, it just made complete sense to pull it all together because we had already been collaborating, working together. Our visions were very similar. Our principles, convictions were very similar. What we were seeking in terms of culture and outcome of the growth of our firm was very in sync. So It just made sense to pull it all together. So we started making plans for that back in 2022.
That had to be difficult to be thinking about business planning, but then also doing the business.
Absolutely.
It feels like another job to be thinking about strategically expanding and coming together. And we joke about the marriage thing, but it is a little bit like that in terms of joining life and the rhythm and sync of the business.
The time invested in bringing those 3 practices together, and even we rebranded.
Okay.
And so as we were doing that, we were thinking through what's our structure going to be, but also thinking through what's our name going to be, how do we roll that out. A lot of time was spent on those conversations during that time, in addition to the time that we were spending serving our clients. And it was worth it because we were really pleased with how everything came together. But yes, it is kind of a challenge to bring all of that together. And even anyone who's been through the process of naming an organization,
right,
or the process of naming a child can understand that it may seem easy on the surface, but really getting it right is worth the effort of really thinking through what do we want this to say.
How did you come up with the name, and what does it mean to you guys?
So we're accountants. We're not creative types by definition, right? But we actually brought in a consultant to help us, and ultimately we did make the decisions. We did choose our own name. We did kind of decide on our own branding together. But with that consultant's help, we did a lot of discussion about what we wanted our firm to look like, what we wanted it to be. We were trying to come up with a water theme, just because our facility, we do have a co-work facility, and that's in the water tower. So we were trying to come up with something that was in line with that. We do a lot of work with other CPA firms, so there's collaboration involved. So we were wanting something with collaboration or co in the name. And then Surge was something that eventually evolved out of that. We want to grow together with our team internally and with our clients externally. So that's how it came.
So there was a lot of meaning into each one of those elements, including the logo itself, some of the colors. You have like a water, invoke a water theme and impression. And do you guys include that around in the spaces that you have and, trying to incorporate that? I mean, a new brand is fun to play with, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. And the logo that this consultant designed for us has come together in a way that we've been able to use several different variations on it that all are very consistent with each other.
Right.
But it's allowed us to use that logo in a variety of contexts. Mm-hmm. And we've been really pleased with how that's played out in each context, and just seeing how he used skills that we didn't have to bring something to life for us.
Yeah, I remember in 2014, the board made the decision Maranatha Baptist Bible College would become Maranatha Baptist University. And along with that, we wanted to be very intentional about how we rolled that out, how we explained it, and do so in both a visual way and, obviously verbally as well. And Becky Manley, who's here for our conference and one of our keynotes this conference, her firm is the firm that we engaged. She's a BJ grad as well. You guys are both BJ grads. And she and her firm did a phenomenal job. But they did the same thing. They came up, they talked to all of our leadership. They really wanted to find out what we were all about. and incorporate those into the design elements that they came up with. I remember well some of the proposals. You get a few different ideas, 3-4 different, very different directions, and there were some definite rejects along the way that no, I don't think so.
Yeah,
because we were doing a mascot change at the same time from Crusader to what, and we didn't know what that would be. I have a list of about 250 rejected, ideas that people contributed along the way. And do you remember what the number 2 was?
No.
You don't remember? The Yeti? Remember that?
Oh,
yeah.
Huh?
It was like, it would have worked,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think even under certain circumstances, we should have like an alternate.
That's actually been in the news recently. The Utah Hockey Club is what they're playing as right now.
Okay.
Is essentially a new franchise.
Yeah.
And they were pursuing the name Yeti
In the NHL?
and ran into trademark issues and are now moving on to their number 2.
Glad I didn't
Yeah.
choose that one. then.
Apparently, now you might have been just
expensive.
out ahead of the Yeti
I feel like
tumbler
Yeah,
curve.
if we'd have stayed out of the Tumblr market, I feel like it would have been okay. But that had not taken off at the time, trust me.
Exactly.
But maybe we could have sued them for trademark
there you
infringement.
go.
I could be rich.
New revenue stream.
Missed opportunity. But we went with SaberCats, and there are a couple of teams in different, like the Houston SaberCats is a, I don't know, third-tier football team, something or other, indoor maybe, and a couple of things. And actually, the Nashville Predators, if you look at their logo, it's actually a saber-toothed cat, which is kind of cool as well.
It is.
Anyway, that's fun to go through that, and it kind of does bring you, but it probably also requires a level of retrospection and circumspection, maybe introspection, if we can go those 3, as to what it's all about. You can tend to, in business, and this I'm sure is part of your talk in your workshop, but you can tend to diffuse your focus and just sort of respond to opportunities versus feeling like you're in some sort of strategic control in driving the business in a purposeful direction. So as you engaged with that process, what were some of the core identity points for this firm that you wanted to see emerge?
Yeah, so ultimately we ended up having a extensive discussion about our core values,
Yeah.
and it resulted in an acronym based on our name, so Surge. So the first one was actually the hardest, even though you think it's the easiest because it starts with S. But it's actually hard to find good values that fall under S. But we ended up
Lots
with
of words start with S, but apparently none of them make good.
None
or
of them
were
fit for
redundant
us.
with other things that we
Right,
had
right.
already selected.
So we end up with sagacious, meaning wise, rational, reasonable, which we think fits quite well with our profession and what we're trying to do,
Yeah.
which is to bring wisdom to our clients and to the other CPA firms that we work with.
If you're not competent, then being
Exactly,
nice or having integrity, those sorts of values, which we all would, pursue, without competence, then who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
And we
you gotta-
wrestled a lot with the idea of, do we really want to use a word that's a little more obscure, like sagacious? But what we recognized was that what it represented really was something we valued. And we wanted that idea to be in there. And so it made the right choice to be the S in the word
Yeah.
surge as a result.
I like it.
And plus, if someone has to look up the word sagacious
Yeah.
to figure out what it is, they've thought about it even further than just reading it for the first time. So
Now, it's
Right.
also not as obscure as we thought. We encountered video evidence of Rob Gronkowski using it.
yes, that is
and
true.
that was a little bit of a surprise.
Well,
But-
yeah,
Yeah,
not the world's most famous thinker.
no.
exactly.
Nobody
we got a good
pays him
laugh
to
out of
think
that.
for a living. You know what I mean? But it does have a little bit of a connotation of wisdom, which is more than just knowledge and competence. And I think that plays well for your Christian ethic as well. That this idea that there is an applied knowledge that brings a deeper level of impact. So I like that.
Yep.
All right. So you came up with a good one.
Right, and the next one is was unity,
Yep.
which we value unity very very high in terms of our team. We want cohesiveness. We want to have each other's back. We want to support each other. Reliability is the third.
Well, before you go on to all right, because you probably have to think about them now.
Yep.
It's easy to get the first two.
Yeah, yeah.
I could give you our first two, maybe three. We got 9 though, and wasn't smart enough to make them, alliterated like you guys did. All right, so on unity, I have a question for you. All right, have you thought about this? Well, one of ours is unity, so that's why I would be thinking about that too. There's a darker side to unity that you almost don't want to have, and that is sort of the groupthink. You can have unity at the cost of maybe the truth even. Like if there's a yes man culture, you're going to have unity. Everybody just goes along with what the boss says or whatever. But your organization could just nosedive because of a lack of creativity, a lack of transparency, or just not having the good ideas that come from the conflict sometimes of chewing and working on it. So I've tried to explain with our team, it's not unity at any cost. It's unity around the truth, but we arrive at the truth many times through a competitive or even adversarial process of looking at every angle of a thing and testing our assumptions and things like that. So I think we do have to kind of be careful to qualify what we mean by unity.
Yeah,
and of course, the way you described it is perfect.
Yeah, it's not just the idea of we agree.
Yeah.
It's that we agree on something that's right and something that's good. I think that's important in the church context. It's important in so many contexts. It's saying we have to pursue the right answer together.
Yeah.
But simply getting everyone on the same page isn't enough if that page isn't the right page.
Exactly. We're unified in purpose and direction, in mission or cause, and that certainly will propel an organization forward. So, yeah, I like that one. Okay, unity, and you said R is?
Reliability.
Reliability.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do what we say we're going to do.
Imagine that. That'll set you apart today.
Yeah.
How many times people, oh yeah, to get your business, all the promises are made. Everybody's always, thinking in the beginning it's all going to work out great. But to find a partner that cares about your success and that actually follows through is so hard to find. It's unique, isn't it?
And we want it to be more than just surface level or more than just not being unreliable. We want it to be something where they can lean on us, where we will not let them down, even if they are coming to us with a need. And we can be someone that can support them through that need, a challenge that they're working through, an accounting issue, or even a business issue that shows itself in an accounting way, and really be a resource to them, going deeper than just coming through on kind of the basic requirements.
Yeah, you have no idea how intimidating the body of law and rules and regulations and expectations. That's an impenetrable, rat's nest to most of us. I mean, I'm an attorney by profession, but not that kind of attorney. That's a specialization that for most of us, we look at it and go, help. And what an awesome profession to be a part of, where you can be like Superman coming to save the day, as an accountant. I'm here with my super calculator or whatever, but it's kind of funny to think of it that way. But it does feel like that sometimes, especially to those of us that need that expertise, and to have somebody reliable that I can lean on and they're not going to go away. that is massive. Wow. That's great. That's a good core value. It's more than an aspiration. I can tell you guys really, really want to live that. All right. That's R. G.
God honoring.
Really? How about that? How does that show up in your business?
From basic decisions of how we're going to operate our business to how we treat people, to how we treat our clients, it should be pervasive. And I don't think we can separate the fact that we are believers from our day-to-day work. And so it's part and parcel of our core values. It doesn't mean that everybody that we hire is a believer, but they certainly must respect the fact that we are intentionally God-honoring in our actions.
Yeah. And that's going to really show up in the way that you operate, the way you treat other people, the way you approach each day. I'm sure you're operating in a very paperwork environment, and yet what you do with that can impact eternity if you'll approach it with that kind of a that kind of a mindset. All right, so then E.
Yeah, and just to add one other thing, ultimately what we do in terms of accounting has no eternal value. But if we do what we do in a God-honoring way, then it becomes eternal value.
That's the key that converts something of temporal value from wood, hay, and stubble, as the Bible talks about, into something that can be eternal.
And people have eternal value. And oftentimes we get to work with organizations that are doing things that have eternal value. But even if we're working with an organization whose focus is a legitimate, good, but temporal activity, there's still people there. And we're still enabling them to accomplish what they're supposed to be doing. And that has value.
Does that also impact the kind of clients that you take?
It does. Yeah. We're not going to take on every client. And we do have to make decisions that some clients don't fit who we are, and we're not the best. We're not going to be the advisor that's going to do the best job to help them to continue whatever work they're trying to accomplish, because it's not in our value system.
That's a nice way of putting it. But aren't you leaving some money on the table there? I mean, wouldn't those be lucrative clients to maintain?
Yeah.
And
So
service?
I would say no. Ultimately, we have one referral source. And that is God and God alone. So all the client opportunities we get come from that sole source. They may come in different forms. They may come from different people, different bankers, attorneys, and so forth and so on. But ultimately, we have one referral source.
And so you're thinking, if I take this casino or whatever type
kissing
of a business.
Let's say kissing
Okay,
booth.
there you go. that kind of client on. They might have a lot of money to spend on our work, but I don't want to ruin my relationship with the Lord. I want to be in the focus and have His good hand of blessing on our organization.
Right.
Interesting.
As a practical matter, too, there's enough work out there that we will be just fine without those organizations. It's much the same way that I think of books. There are so many books in the world. There are so many good books that I don't need to waste my time on books that aren't
Music
worthwhile.
is the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even if it were that it would hold us back, it's worth it because it's the right thing to do, because it honors God. But at the end of the day, we're just giving up one opportunity, and it allows us to pursue a different opportunity when that time comes along.
So even if you could expand to 1,000 in your office and be very, very powerful, all of a sudden now you're in the big time conversations, and you guys are famous for whatever accountant famous Hall of Fame there is. That's not the appeal for you guys. Your calculation seems different to me, success wise, or what your goal is.
Focus on something that matters.
Yeah. And that's why you're here. I mean, that's what this whole podcast is dedicated to, talking to people who are about something more than themselves. And you're in a field of accounting, which I think most people look at as intimidating, complicated, super smart people that go into this with a lot to offer. And yet you're deciding, I can pursue that, but I've chosen to devote myself to a much more limited clientele for the sake of my testimony and honoring God. So before we get into mission of the organization, which I think is sort of, you're building that, what's your last one, E?
So the last one is ethical, and that one's kind of part and parcel of the accounting profession. We have to be ethical, and that's just very basic, and so that is incorporating our core values.
All right, so maybe there's an argument to say you shouldn't have to put that in there because that's just assumed. But you guys said, no, we want to go ahead and say out loud what needs to be said here. And we operate in a day and age where it hasn't been too long since Lehman Brothers went out of business, and there used to be the Big Five. And, we've had some scandals. We've had some pretty high-profile stuff going on where at least the CPAs were co-conspirators, if not the leaders of all that. And so you decided, no, we're going to go ahead and state this. Do you feel like that's really important to do that? And how do you feel like that's helping to communicate to your team? This is kind of a specific way that we do things.
Yeah. So I've been in bigger firms, much bigger firms, large regional firms, and, you don't have always that confidence that from top to bottom, everyone is committed to ethics. You have a lot of belief systems that come together. You have a lot of different motivators. Sometimes those motivators are money in and of itself, and that's not our primary motivation. So that helps with us being, I think, helps us to be able to be more committed to ethics than maybe some others that are driven by money.
And it allows us to do a couple of other things with that idea of ethics. It allows us to really keep in front of our clients the reminder that this profession as a whole is supposed to be this for them, that should be the hallmark of the CPA profession. So it allows us to do something positive there, but it also allows us to say that because that's one of our values, we would value that even if we were not required to approach things that way.
Yeah.
That we're not just doing it to check a box. We're doing it because it's right, because it's who we are.
I see.
Yeah, I think it also drives away opportunities that may not be in our best interest. So if somebody is unethical, they're desiring somebody who's going to provide a stamp of approval upon whatever they choose to do. That's not us. So I think that helps with that as well. And our team members. So it's not just a message to potential clients, current clients. It's also a message to potential team members, current team members.
All right. Two things I want to ask you about that. You mentioned that you've been experienced or witnessed in organizations where you just weren't sure there was a top-down commitment to acting in an ethical manner. I'm the CEO at Maranatha, a leader of an organization. I would like to think that people can trust Maranatha to operate ethically. But what are some of the ways, like counsel me or a leader in an organization, what are some ways that potentially you could undermine that confidence in the ethics of the leadership or its commitment to that ethical, maybe even in unconscious ways or ways that we might not notice?
Yeah, I think one way that I've seen that may be helpful is organizations that espouse very strong value system, and we emphasize perfection in all we do. We emphasize we're going to always do it the right way, and there's ultimately no tolerance for error or problems or issues. And when you create that environment, it begins to create an element of fear throughout the organization that, I see a problem here, I see a failure here, but I can't say anything because that would be interpreted as not achieving the values of the system, and ultimately I may get terminated for that. I'll give you a simple example. We are working I had a client that they were in the nuclear power industry, and so they're involved with a lot of cleanup with nuclear power plants worldwide. And they had a very strong tone at the top, and that just escalated throughout the whole organization. No tolerance for error was basically their mantra, and so we came in as auditors, and we were auditing the books, and we're finding journal entries, things that are very basic. This is an accrual you should have booked, and all of a sudden, management saying, we disagree with your interpretation of GAAP as it pertains to accruals. We generally accepted accounting person like, this is so clear. There's not
this is black or white.
This isn't even hard. And then we get into complicated areas with a lot of benefit plans and different issues that we had to make adjustments for, and they're like, definitely not adjusting for that. And then it kind of dawned on us as we're going into an audit committee that the reason was because the tone at the top was no acceptance of any error. And here we're making adjustments that they said, okay, these are errors.
Looked like an error.
And if that's brought to management and the audit committee and leadership, we'll get fired.
Yeah.
And so we sat down with management and said, look, you've got to recognize that we're all humans. We all fail in different ways. You need to open up that communication from the bottom to the top so you know what those errors are so you can address it and deal with it and make changes. And so that's
unrealistic production goals.
Yeah, at the top, we are doing the best we can. We are espousing strong values, but at the bottom, all the issues are not bubbling up to the top because of the fear.
The fear.
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge. Now, you want to be ethical by implication indicates that there's a right and a wrong. And sometimes there's a right and a wrong. You alluded to the rules that have to be followed. But, if I'm an organization, we've even heard our president say this, like, I'm not looking to maximize the amount of taxes I'm paying. So find me ways to save and arguments to make, and let's try and color that as close as we can to save as much money. Now, in ministries, a lot of times that gets spiritualized because it's like, hey, keep more money here so I can put it to use in ministry, cutting corners even on what might be ethically acceptable. And I've seen in my career, I was a staff attorney at the Christian Law Association for about 10 years, and I've seen plenty of that in my career, even with well-meaning pastor types, right, in ministries. And so how do you balance the client's interest in minimizing his tax burden? Now, you're working with a lot of nonprofits, but that's still an issue, versus the ethics of the right and wrong, because I think there is argument to be made within some of these gray areas, right? So is there a balance to that you've found?
I think one question that's really helpful to ask there is not just, is it right or is it wrong? If the answer to either of those is clearly that it is right or it is wrong, then that ends the conversation.
We've already decided that. Yeah.
But if there needs to be further discussion because you need to think it through more, because that's not crystal clear, it's not set in stone, there may still be a right answer, and we just need the wisdom to find it. Or it may be that there's wisdom needed to make a decision on, and this is what I'm building to, the question, well, what's the best answer? And really coming at it from that perspective, where we recognize that sometimes there's more than one legitimate option in front of us. But from a stewardship standpoint, but also from a reputational standpoint, there's some answer that's ultimately best relative to the others. And there's an ethical aspect to that as well, of stewarding the resources that God gives us,
right,
but also stewarding the reputation.
Yeah.
Stewardship is about more than resources.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have to help an organization steward is the reputation of, is this going to, if it's a Christian organization, is this going to steward God's name?
Yeah.
But even aside from that, for a secular organization, their reputation, is this really going to put you in a position that's best?
Yeah.
Because of how something could be perceived.
Yeah, short run versus long run profit maximization, or in the long run for a ministry. Of course, most of the guys I would deal with say, well, if I'm out of business, I don't have much long run to worry about. I want to, it's like we've been in survival mode for 70 years, and you just cannot operate that way. You've got to think about the long-term effects. For donation-based nonprofits, it's the death knell. I mean, no one wants to throw their hard-earned cash towards a ministry that's not committed to ethically following the guidelines and following through on their mission commitments. So that's a very short-sighted, way to approach leadership, I'm sure. So what is the ultimate mission of your organization or your approach to it? And that could be answered both on the corporate level, but then also individually for you as men that have to make a decision about where to spend your life. You've devoted your lives to this. So what makes that worthwhile?
Yeah, I would say that we set ourselves apart from other CPA firms in particular because everybody espouses work-life balance. And that work-life balance is much different than what we would describe as work-life balance. This time of year, a lot of firms are working 60-plus hours a week, billable hours, and that's not who we are. We try to be even keel across the year with our hours for our team. But ultimately, we've extended that conversation from work-life to work-life serve, because we believe that God has designed us and given us skills and talents and abilities that we can use for His purposes in different ways, different ministries, our own churches, on the mission field. So whatever that may look like or be, we want to make it where our team can be freed up to do that, serve and take care of their families, but also to go and serve God in a ministry that God's called them to, and to support them in doing that. So sometimes that takes the form of accounting work that we do in Dominican Republic, or maybe it involves being on a board of a mission board, or being on a board of a ministry that's doing things globally or even locally. And so we want to make those opportunities available to our team.
And sometimes it's directly using those accounting skills. Other times it's not. And it's really just saying we want our team members to have the capacity to be involved in service opportunities, and especially ministry opportunities, whether it's directly using their accounting skills or whether it's not. And ultimately it's going to be a mix of both. My wife and I have had the opportunity to be involved in a number of different aspects of just really participating in missions efforts. Some of those involve me using the fact that I'm a CPA in
Opens doors.
Board capacity, that sort of thing. Others just involve us teaching and serving within our church as part of our missions program. And the fact that I'm an accountant is actually irrelevant.
Yeah.
But it's still, having that work-life balance creates the capacity to do those sorts of things.
Nobody in the Sunday school class I teach cares if I'm a lawyer or not.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I have Dr. Marriott in my class, Dr. Anderson, some of our seminary guys. It's a little intimidating, to be honest.
No pressure.
No, exactly. But honestly, I like that because it's an outlet for me. And if I wasn't teaching, I'd still be studying and wanting to get into the Word. And I think as a believer, you have to have that local church outlet. And it's not... Sometimes, especially those of us that consider what we do vocationally to be ministry, there can be a thought that, well, that's my ministry. But I believe that the Bible is pretty clear that we need to be plugged in and part of a vibrant local church, and that's really where our families are going to thrive, and we're to be plugged in. So there needs to be some margin with our professional life to allow for that. And you talk about work-life balance, it comes down to choices that we make to prioritize. And so I never met an accountant that was really a 9-to-5 type of a job. I think if you go into that field, you sort of know there's going to be some long hours. So how are you guys balancing your responsibility to be a good husband and to be a good father?
Yeah. So in general, we tend not to work more than 45 hours year round. So we do have a very different model than other CPA firms. We're not requiring people to work on weekends. We're not requiring extended hours throughout the week. If we have obligations with clients, we all jump in, we make it happen before the deadlines, but we're trying to avoid those bursts of work and then, balancing out year round.
You found that if you're intentional about making that happen, it's possible?
It's possible, yeah.
You probably have to stay pretty focused during those 45 hours.
It helps that we don't do tax work.
Okay.
So a tax firm
they
would
don't.
have a harder time. Maybe on the average they could achieve the same thing, but they're going to have more compression than what we have. I think another thing, though, that really helps with this is that when you identify the things that you're supposed to be doing outside of work, family, ministry opportunities, etc., and you make sure that you're doing those things, it protects against the urge to work just a little bit more, because you have another commitment.
I see.
And that's easier said than done, but it's really saying I get to go do this in my evening, something with my family or a ministry opportunity. We're just getting ready to start baseball season, youth baseball season for the upcoming year, and our assistant pastor and I coach our sons' teams together, and so we had a meeting Tuesday night this week to get ready for that, and then we're going to have practices and we're going to have games, and those are things where when you have something like that on the calendar, you go do it. But other things aren't quite as formalized, but it's still important to say, this belongs here, and so that's what I'm going to do during that time. But you do have to set your work life up in such a way that it accommodates that, and that we're supportive of each other as we do that.
Does it help in your case, uniquely, you guys are 100% remote, if I understand this right, and you're both in different locations, and you have your partners are all over the place. How are you making that work? You know, a lot of firms are going back to the in-person, and
Sure.
we got to be around the water cooler and that sort of thing. But you guys are making it work. So what's the secret sauce?
So we focused on it from day one. I actually think it's easier to accomplish today than when we started the firm.
Yeah.
When we started the firm, you didn't have a lot of really established cloud-based software products. Now you do. We're 100% cloud-based in our software. And we've literally created a virtual office. So we have software that we use where you have an office. It is a conference rooms, and our clients come in and meet us in our conference
What
rooms.
are you using, VR or what's
It's
going on?
it's an app called Kumo Space, and
No kidding.
everybody has their own office. You can decorate it the way you like.
Yeah.
You can go and visit people in the different offices, walk up and down the
Pop
hallways.
in and out.
I click on somebody's office, it takes my icon over to their office, and we're in a video conference.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like
We-
that.
we
And then
can-
others can join. We have conference rooms where our whole team can do this together. You can each team member can personalize their
Yeah.
space to a degree. And so, like, for example, I've got a virtual sign sitting in my virtual office that says that I'm out of office because of this conference the next couple of days. And so that way team members know why I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
But it really has been amazing from a collaboration standpoint. It is not the same as the real thing. It's not the same as being in person, but it brings us closer to that than really, anything else that we've seen, because it's not just the ability that I could pick up the phone and call someone, or I could get on a video conference. We have that collaboration throughout the day, sometimes even with multiple team members at the same time. Sometimes I'll look over and I'll need to talk to someone and I'll see that they're already in a meeting. Other times I'll look over and I'll see that they're in a meeting with the other person that I also need to catch. And so I will go over because, I need both of you. Maybe
So you
not for
just
the same
barge
thing.
into their
Yeah.
virtual Zoom or
Exactly.
whatever.
You can shut the door.
Okay.
And that's helpful from time to time as well, just to kind of provide that barrier. But it has really been tremendous for our team.
Now, have you guys chosen to work out of your own homes, or you mentioned a co-working space. Do you like to go somewhere and be there at an office, or does it just not even matter?
Yeah, so I work from home almost every day. I
Okay.
do go into the office occasionally, I'd say once a week, maybe once every other week. But there's nobody there, so why would I go?
Yeah,
If
that's
I
what
have
I'm wondering.
meetings for clients, I'll go to that facility if they want to get together with us. But our clients have gotten used to meeting us virtually, and so
Yeah.
most of our meetings are virtual meetings.
I'd say 90% of our accounting meetings are now virtual, and I like that. I do like it when they come to the campus and we get a chance to talk about things. I think in some ways virtual meetings do tend to be pretty content focused. Get on, get what you need, get off. Whereas somebody sitting in your office, you get a little bit more of the personal touch, I feel like, which in some cases is good, some cases is bad. Are you doing things to specifically try to build that team and the mutual shared vision? Because you have a pretty solid, well-defined vision, but I would guess that could get eroded over time, or not necessarily easy to onboard a new person.
So because we're so spread out, we do have a spring event where everybody comes together, and it's usually fun focused.
Yeah.
We'll do something in the fall. We'll have a New Year's kickoff dinner. And then every week we get together and do just a all hands on deck meeting. We talk about administrative things. We actually shared things that guys doing in our lives in our devotions. We have a book program that we instituted. So for anybody that wants to read a book, can get paid $250 to read the book. And all you got to do is just tell us about it. It could take you 3 minutes, or take 15 minutes, or take an hour. But just tell us what you learn. It's got to be applicable.
Do you have to work for you guys to get that 250?
Yes, you do have to
Oh,
work.
You do have to work for us, and
We are hiring.
the book does have to be pre-approved as being something where there's some
Oh, I see.
conceivable connection to what we do. It doesn't
not too
have
hard.
to be an accounting book by any means, but we're also, we're not talking Sherlock Holmes here.
Yeah.
We're wanting it to be something where we think our team would benefit from hearing this person share about
Yeah.
the book that they read. But if it meets those criteria, go for it.
Wow. I like it.
Yep.
We'll have to do that here. Do you get a donor that does that, or it just comes out of the firm account?
We just pay them.
I'm going to need a donor.
You're welcome to be the donor.
Mutually. All right. So how have you found this whole model to work? Does it work? Is it strictly spiritual? The blessings are strictly spiritual, or have you found that it actually is, when you use the Lord's principles for the Lord's business, that it actually can be successful in both dimensions?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I've actually seen unbelievers practice God's principles with great success. And I've also seen that with believers practicing God's principles with good success. So I think God honors adherence to his principles regardless. So there's a great deal of value just from that. But to have a team that's intentionally God-honoring plus trying to apply those principles, I think we've created something very different and very unique, and hopefully we can continue to grow it and sustain it. And we're not looking to be the biggest CPA firm. We're looking to take care of our families. And who knows, we may not even be doing accounting in the days ahead. God may call us to do something different. And so we want to equip our people to do what God calls them to do, whether it's accounting or otherwise. So,
well said. That's exactly what Maranatha is all about. Whatever vocation God calls you into, you need to see that as ministry, do it unto his glory. And I appreciate you guys showing us what that looks like in the real world. Thanks for joining us today.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to On Mission, a podcast produced by Maranatha Baptist University. We're living in a society where anti-God, anti-America forces just want to burn it all down. I'm Matt Davis, CEO of Maranatha Baptist University, and I want you to know that there is a college that you can still trust. Maranatha's faculty and staff love this country. We recognize the truth that this country was founded on biblical principles by men and women of faith and true conviction. Our founders understood that liberty depends on well-educated and God-fearing citizens who are willing to fight for what they believe in. At Maranatha, our mission is to develop leaders who stand for the truth with passion, grace, and conviction. Young men and women who love and serve others without giving in to the cynical and divisive ideologies that threaten our very foundations. Maranatha is different. Find out more at mbu.edu. And for information about our podcast guests and to listen to all the previous episodes, visit mbu.edu/podcast. Join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.